Aloha, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. We'll be starting right now. So my name is Hypatia Pine. I'm the Alumni Assistant with the Office of Alumni Engagement here at the East-West Center. I'm very excited for today's session. I hope you enjoy it too. We have over 300 people attending today, so I'm really excited for that. This is Climate Resilience, the Critical Role of Coral Reefs. This webinar is co-hosted by the East-West Center Women, Leadership, and Sustainability Affinity Group and the Indo-PACOM Pacific Environmental Security Education Working Group. It is also sponsored by ASU, Julie Ann Wrigley Global Futures Lab, Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Small States Branch, the Inter-Parliamentary Union Parliaments for the Planet, and the International Universities Climate Alliance. Before we begin, some housekeeping rules. We will have two 45-minute sessions. Please utilize the Q&A section for your questions, and our facilitators will help you to answer them during this webinar. Also noting that this webinar is recorded and will be available for the public later. I'd like to introduce Ambassador Amanda Ellis, who is today's host and moderator. Ambassador Amanda Ellis is the Senior Director of ASU Julie Ann Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory, EWCA Convener, LSA, and Co-Chair for Indo-PACOM Environmental Security Partnerships Education Working Group. She is also a notable East-West Center alum, having received the East-West Center Distinguished Alumni Award, and is also the immediate past president of the East-West Center Association. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Hypatia, and thank you for the wonderful job you've done putting this together. Aloha mai kako, and welcome everybody from across the region. I'm absolutely delighted to serve as your moderator today for this very important conversation. And while we were in the green room, Emma from the Philippines pointed out we are women leaders on the forefront of climate action, supported by some very good men as well. So we hope you're going to enjoy today's webinar. It's such a critical topic at a time when the Secretary General has declared Code Red for humanity, and we have breached the 1.5 degree Celsius threshold a number of times this past year. The critical role of coral reefs for our region is paramount. We know that reefs, while they're only 2% of the ocean's surface, harbor 25% of the biodiversity, and that, of course, plays into food security. Reefs are also very important as buffers for storms, and as our seas continue to rise, that too becomes more important. So we're delighted today to have representation from across the region, from Sri Lanka to Samoa, from Australia to the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and of course, I'm from Aotearoa, New Zealand. We're also thrilled to have such high-level support with the East-West Center, the leading organization in the Asia-Pacific for both cultural and technical exchange, Indo-Pacific Command as the largest of all of the US commands, covering over half our planet's ocean. And then ASU as the leading US university in both sustainability and innovation, the Inter-Parliamentary Union and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, bringing together members of Parliament committed to legislative action for climate. And of course, they have a very important function with both budgetary allocation and oversight. And finally, the International Universities Climate Alliance. So I'm delighted as an active East-West Center alum to introduce President Suzanne Puanani Vares-Lum, the first woman and the first Native Hawaiian to lead the East-West Center. Welcome.
Aloha mai kako. Thank you so much. Our distinguished alum and Ambassador Amanda Ellis, we're so proud of you and so proud of the many alumni here. And it is really my pleasure to welcome you all to the third East-West Center Women, Leadership, and Sustainability Affinity Group event today. You know, today signifies another significant step in our journey towards creating a more equitable, sustainable, and empowered future for women globally. and we are grateful to our male allies as well. Through the East-West Center Women Leadership and Sustainability Affinity Group, we have created a powerful platform for meaningful dialogue, collaboration, and action. So here we come together to exchange ideas, share experiences, and forge partnerships that drive positive change and protect our precious coral reefs. And I can say that for someone who is from Hawaii, surrounded by this beautiful ocean and coral reefs. And I really want to take a moment to acknowledge the presence of our wonderful East-West Center alumni from across the region who are actively contributing to environmental solutions, aligning with one of our 5 strategic pillars, fostering environmental solutions. Your dedication, your commitment to addressing the pressing environmental challenges are truly commendable. And your presence here today enriches our discussions, initiatives. And so let's take this opportunity to drive positive action and create a lasting impact on our planet and its people. So proud to be amongst all of you today. Mahalo nui loa.
And mahalo, President Susie. Thank you so much. We're now delighted to have our co-host, Indo-Pacific Command, and unfortunately, Major General Joshua Rudd was called away to officiate at a ceremony. So he was very innovative and got on his iPhone and has recorded a message and sent a photograph. So Hypatia, could you please pay the remarks? Thank you.
Aloha and welcome. This is Major General Josh Rudd, Chief of Staff at United States Indo-Pacific Command. We at Indo-PACOM are delighted to partner online today through our Environmental Security Forum Education Working Group. A special thanks to Ambassador Ellis for convening us all in your role as co-chair, and to Admiral De Silva of Sri Lanka for the most recent in-person session. As the largest of the 6 U.S. combatant commands, the Indo-PACOM area of responsibility covers nearly 52% of the Earth's surface, or as we like to say, from Hollywood to Bollywood and from penguins to polar bears. And most of that area is comprised of water. We at Indo-PACOM recognize climate resilience, and the role of coral reefs is key to environmental security. We are clear-eyed about the challenges that increasing extreme weather events and rising temperatures have on our collective security and the follow-on effects on our populations. We understand that these challenges are best met together. This webinar allows us to share our expertise and to focus on action-oriented solutions. Our Center for Excellence in Disaster Management and Humanitarian Assistance leads Indo-PACOM's efforts on this, and I encourage all of you to continue to engage with them. Thanks again to everyone who is participating and for what you're doing to take on this critical challenge.
Thank you, General Rudd. I love that, from Hollywood to Bollywood. And as you so rightly say, our challenges are indeed best met together. I'm now pleased to introduce the Chief Operating Officer and a veteran, Chris Howard from Arizona State.
Dr. Chris Howard, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Arizona State University, a university that's been marked by being #1 in sustainability, #1 in innovation, and in the United States, #1 for impact as well. We're delighted to be hosting you all for this important webinar. Sustainability, climate is very, very important to us. Working with our friends at Indo-PACOM, we're very happy to be putting on and working together on this important webinar and working group. And as we say in ASU, forks up, and let's make a real difference when it comes to sustainability.
It's now my great pleasure to introduce the Secretary General of the Interparliamentary Union, Martin Chungong. With 180 member countries, Martin is the first non-European and first African to serve in this prestigious role. Thank you, Martin.
The Interparliamentary Union, the global organization of parliaments, is committed to mobilizing its 180 member parliaments to take action in order to ensure that the billions of people that they represent have just climate futures. Our climate campaign, Parliaments for the Planet, which we launched last year, is therefore designed to mobilize parliamentarians to act on the climate emergency. The IPU is delighted to partner with you for this webinar on climate resilience and the critical role of coral reefs. We look forward to the rest of the series.
So I am thrilled now to move into the core of our program. And the death of coral reefs has been identified by climate scientists, including Professor Johan Rockström, who co-chairs the Earth League with us, as a key climate tipping point that we are likely to cross this decade, meaning it's happening on our watch. So what can we do? What action can we actually take? And why is this so important? I'm thrilled to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Laura Brewington, to open and set the scenes as to why coral reefs are so critical in climate resilience. Laura is the co-director of the NOAA Climate Adaptation Partnership for the US Pacific Islands region, the Pacific Research on Island Solutions for Adaptation. And this is a collaboration, which is the spirit of this whole webinar. We have so many wonderful organizations and experts from military to academia to activist, conservationist. So Laura, your program is a collaborative endeavor between ASU Global Futures, the East-West Center, and the University of Hawaii. And we know you have very deep engagement with communities and policymakers across the region. So we'd love you to set the scene for us. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amanda, and aloha, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon, this morning, whatever time it is where you are, representing the Pacific RESA program as the NOAA Climate Adaptation Partnership for the US Pacific Islands region. We have a broad set of research programs that are generating climate information to help manage risks throughout the region and support resilient and sustainable Pacific Island communities. Coral reefs, as Amanda has said several times, are critical ecosystems and habitats for species that are both commercially and culturally important in our region. And they're experiencing large-scale degradation and change due to climate stressors. So I wanted to kick us off today by showcasing first the work of two young artists who contributed the paintings that are shown on this opening slide. These were submitted to the U.S. National Climate Assessment's first ever art and climate exhibit. And these two were among the 92 finalists whose work was selected to accompany the assessment report that was released last November by the Biden-Harris administration. Several of Pacific RESA's researchers contributed to the Hawaii and Pacific Islands chapter of the NCA5, which delivers some powerful warnings about the current health and state of our oceans, reefs, and marine resources, as well as the risks that they face under a changing climate. And you'll be hearing from one of those authors, Dr. Kirsten Olson, later on. Healthy reefs also form a primary line of defense against climate impacts in coastal communities. A paper from about 10 years ago by Filippo Ferrario and others analyzed the role and cost effectiveness of coral reefs in terms of reducing risk around the world. And this team found that reefs provide substantial protection against natural hazards by reducing wave energy by almost 100%, by 97%. And they significantly reduce wave height by an average of 84%. This team estimated that those protections extend to at least 100 million people living only a few feet above sea level and a few miles from any coral reef in the world. Restoring coral reefs is also a fraction of the cost of other protective measures for vulnerable shorelines, like building breakwaters or seawalls, for example. And that's why even the global insurance industry has stepped into reef ecosystem repair and restoration, because it's a triple win. You know, it's a triple win for nature, it's a win for coastal communities, first and foremost, but it's also a win for the insurance companies who would otherwise be paying out significantly more in property damages without the protection of that natural infrastructure against storm surge and wave run-up. In 2022, you know, at the top right of this slide, I wanted to highlight that the Nature Conservancy purchased the first ever coral reef insurance policy in the United States which provides payouts for up to $2 million for rapid reef restoration and repair here in Hawaii after a tropical storm or hurricane. And this was based on a project that they piloted in Mexico that has already proven the concept that enhancing reef recovery and the benefits that they provide to communities and ecosystems alike is a climate adaptive strategy. Oops. And all of this is why the Allen Coral Atlas is such an incredible tool. It's powered by global satellite data, a network of scientists and coral reef experts, and they're all using the Atlas to monitor reef health, to advance marine spatial planning, and to develop innovative solutions for climate risks. They're helping us evaluate the hazards that coastal areas are facing. And so with that, I think now it's time to hear from the architects of the Atlas itself and see how this tool actually works. So I'll turn it back over to you, Amanda, and mahalo.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Laura. And wow, that's amazing. The 98% difference in energy. So such a great scene set for us. Well, I'm thrilled now to introduce Paulina Martin, who is the Program Director of the Allen Coral Atlas, and she is housed at ASU's Center for Global Discovery and Conservation Science. I was very privileged to launch the Atlas at COP26 in Glasgow with the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy on Oceans. What was so amazing to me was that just a few years ago, only 2% of the world's tropical shallow coral reefs had been mapped. And now with the Atlas, it's 100%, right, Paulina? So we're really looking forward to hearing from you and knowing that everybody on the webinar will be able to access the Atlas online and to use it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amanda. And hi, everyone. Special thanks to Laura for that wonderful intro, which helps me sort of gloss over the why this tool exists part, because I think we're all very aware of the threats facing coral reefs and the need for conservation, protection, management of coral reefs. Very quickly, I'm Paulina Martin. I'm with Arizona State University, like Amanda said. And I also want to call out that I am not a scientist. I come with the program hat, but I come from the solution space of how can I and how can we at the Allen Coral Atlas work with the best scientists in the world, the best technologists in the world, and get the information that they have out to the people who are doing the work on the front lines to support management, restoration, conservation, whatever is most needed for their reefs. As we're all aware, coral reefs are critical to both marine species and to us as humans. We rely on them for cultural value, coastal protection, for livelihoods, income from tourism, sustenance, many more things. That's why the Allen Coral Atlas was developed specifically as a tool for governments, NGOs, educators, scientists, even snorkelers, to support coral reef conservation. The Allen Coral Atlas, very broadly, is a global high-resolution mapping and monitoring system of the world's tropical shallow coral reefs. Back in 2017, 5 founding organizations came together with this vision to build an atlas that would be a living, if you will, website where people could look at dynamic information and use it to support their conservation decision-making. Our main goals at the start were to map the world's reefs with one consistent method, because like Amanda mentioned, there really was not one single source of this data at a high resolution. We had a goal to monitor coral bleaching and threats to reefs in real time, or as close to real time as we could, and to also create this community of coral reef conservationists, scientists, educators who have this one common goal and help build capacity for use of technical data in that work. In pursuit of those goals, we harnessed advanced technology to drive insights for conservation. So here is a screen capture of what you'll see if you go to allencoralatlas.org. It's free and open. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's that you can see it any day, any time of day. You can just log in and see it for yourself. Satellites capturing daily images of the world's coral reefs work alongside advanced algorithms and machine learning to identify characteristics of the reef. Working with teams on the ground, local reef data and field expeditions calibrate and validate the habitat maps to improve their accuracy. As our original core data product, the Atlas's benthic habitat maps provide detailed classification data on any reef on the globe, identifying and quantifying ocean composition, such as coral, seagrass, sand, and also the seascape structure or geomorphic zone. These maps are already having an impact, which I'll get more to in just a minute, for the coral reef community that we work with. So in identifying priority areas for protection, assessing environmentally sensitive areas, informing disaster risk response, informing more sustainable coastal development, and drafting countrywide strategy and action plans. So after completing that global scale habitat map that I mentioned of both benthic and geomorphic, we asked ourselves what else is needed to inform protection and restoration of reefs. So we developed data on threats to coral reefs, essentially. First, we set out pulling in the existing data sets from NOAA on sea surface temperature and coral reef watch, essentially bleaching predictions from their data sets. And then we also produced many of our own data sets. So we first generated a method for in Hawaii, and then produced global data on coral bleaching, which I'll describe a little bit more in just a moment. And additionally, right now you're seeing a turbidity data set, which is an annual data set that identifies the amount of sediment in the water column, whether it be natural or anthropogenic, to enable response. So these data sets together can be used to identify areas facing stress that must be managed or monitored and addressed. This gives our users a holistic picture of challenges needing management or intervention in their area. So I said I'll talk a little bit more about bleaching. We developed this capability to monitor bleaching. So just a little bit more about bleaching. You're probably seeing it in the news if you don't already work on this specifically. But as corals are subjected to heightened temperatures and other stressors from a changing climate, they may lose their color. This phenomenon is known as bleaching, and it's a time when coral reefs are at a heightened risk for mortality. So they're not dead yet, but they're stressed. It's essentially a fever. The Atlas's new bleaching monitoring system is the first of its kind. It's really never been done before. It's a little bit of a testing of the limits of technology. But the Atlas's new bleaching monitoring system uses satellite imagery to detect coral bleaching around the world. So with this data collected from satellite, previously in-water monitoring efforts that would have been very costly and unscalable are transformed. Site monitoring can be done remotely and efficiently, and decision makers can see bleaching for themselves. This information is essential to understanding the pressures inflicting a reef and the health of the coral. This novel data set can be used for restoration, for example, identifying areas of high coral tissue loss, focusing monitoring efforts in bleaching areas or non-bleaching areas, and forming rapid response efforts and monitoring differences in reef resilience between managed and unmanaged areas. And lastly, I just wanted to highlight the spatial boundary references that we feature on the Allen Coral Atlas. So you'll see we offer sort of analytics within boundaries. You can either set a polygon that you draw by yourself with our polygon tool, or you can use one of the existing polygon reference data sets that we offer. So we offer country boundaries, think EEZs. So you can find the answer to how much coral reef is there in the outline of Indonesia or Sri Lanka or whatever geography you are most interested in. We also offer marine protected area data sets so that you can see within a protected area specifically how much of these ecosystems is there. Lastly, I wanted to mention that we offer free logins that are the function through which you can download data. So we do offer free and open download of our habitat maps because we know a lot of people want to do their own analysis and, for example, pull it into a GIS platform and do additional analyses, and we welcome that. And all it takes is a quick free login and downloading that information. Very quickly, a little bit about our user community. So people generally come from one of these categories, from government, from NGOs, academia, education, and more the private sector, for example, construction, tourism, and such. But I'd say the biggest groups are government, NGOs, and education. We have a growing user community from nearly every country in the world, even the landlocked ones, which we're pretty proud of. We have data downloads are our major metric for showing success, because it shows that people are manipulating them in some way, which is really what we're proud of. And most proud is that we have supported the establishment of at least 35 new marine protected areas since the creation of the Atlas, and those are just the ones we know of. So these icons here on the map you'll see, I made sure to highlight the Pacific, are where new MPAs have been created using maps and data from our platform. Really proud of that. Just a few case studies. I wanted to mention Sri Lanka because I know we have a few folks on the panel with me from Sri Lanka. A few years back, we were able to work with the government of Sri Lanka to establish a new marine protected area based on habitat maps at Kayankurni Reef on the east side of Sri Lanka. Very proud of the success that they've had there. An additional success story is restoration that's happening by an organization who is based in French Polynesia, although they're expanding to many places in the Pacific, called Coral Gardeners, and they are using our data to identify where the seafloor is appropriate for restoration, and also monitoring the outplants that they have done for coral restoration. So to date, they have planted over 30,000 coral babies, essentially, with the Atlas data to inform site selection. And lastly, in Mozambique, they did their first ever nationwide action plan, the Atlas habitat and threat data to inform that action plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paulina. We could listen to you for hours, and we're going to allow people Q&A. There's some already in the chat if you'd like to look at those, both Q&A and the chat. And thank you for highlighting Sri Lanka also. I know when I was in the Maldives with our next wonderful speaker, Admiral Pyle de Silva, who headed the Navy in Sri Lanka, you were just about to introduce the turbidity data, and there was great excitement. So we're thrilled now to have Admiral Pyle de Silva with us, who is a crack Navy diver. And he, as you said, Paulina, Sri Lanka is really at the forefront of innovative coral reef research and restoration. So, Admiral de Silva, we're looking forward very much to hearing from you on this, and also on the growing impact of plastic and floating debris on coral reefs and the subsequent impact on communities. Thank you for being with us. We know it's early for you in the morning.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. Thank you for the introduction. And I wish everyone good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Here it is in the morning. I express my sincere gratitude once again to Ambassador Amanda Ellis and her team for giving me the opportunity to deliver a virtual presentation on impact of plastic and floating debris on shallow water coral reefs, which is directly linked to the coral restoration strategy. As a coral reef conservation practitioner, I believe that this virtual platform is a good opportunity for me to share my hands-on experience in the critical work of coral reef conservation that I am engaged in. Oceans dominate more than 2/3 of the Earth's surface, making marine ecosystems one of the largest ecosystems on the planet and a source of essential resources for all living organisms. Because the marine ecosystems are vulnerable to sea level rise, ocean acidification, and plastic pollution, they are at the forefront of the climate problem. It is sad to mention that our coral reefs on Earth have already lost up to 50% of their area during the last known decades. Analysis have revealed that up to 90% of reef building coral could be lost by 2050 if warming continues. Shallow water coral reefs are abundant throughout the Asia-Pacific region, These colorful underwater heavens are filled with shape, color, and life. Let's examine this underwater treasure. Over 100 countries in Asia Pacific have some degree of coral reefs, but countries such as Australia, Fiji, Indonesia, Maldives, Papua New Guinea, Philippines, Timor-Leste, Solomon Islands, and Sri Lanka stand out as important stewards of these delicate environments. The tropically luxurious marine habitats of Sri Lanka are well known for their abundance of marine life, long beaches with fine sand, lagoons, mangrove forest, sand dunes, rocky plains, seagrass beds, and coral reefs. In fact, Sri Lanka was the best option for those who loved diving and snorkeling and wanted to see fish and coral long before many other countries in the region. As a result, the tourist sector in Sri Lanka emerged as a major economic contributor to the country. Research indicates that there are about 180 different species of hard coral reef found in Sri Lanka's underwater habitats. Unfortunately, a number of coral reefs such as Hikkadua Reef and the Bar Reef of Kalpitia no longer exist as they once did due to a combination of natural and man-made circumstances. Coral reef of Sri Lanka must maintain a delicate balance between the forces of nature and human activity. In terms of natural causes, it is highlighted that rising temperatures brought on by global warming may result in higher rainfall, which in turn may cause flooding incidents. Sri Lanka is among the Asian nations that increasingly face frequent and severe floods as a result of significant global warming when it comes to natural causes. These floods have the capacity to induce large amount of floating debris and plastic garbage into the ocean from a variety of sources, including rivers, coastal developments, and urban areas. Sri Lanka is blessed with several large and small rivers around the country. Frequent downstream with floating debris and plastics to the ocean are visible with floodwater. Coral reefs are seriously threatened by plastic and floating debris once they enter the marine environment. Coral colonies can sustain physical harm from larger plastic debris, which can suffocate them, obstruct sunlight, and cause abrasions. Contaminants that are carried into the ocean and entangle coral reef in shallow water cause disease and mortality in susceptible species, as well as hinder coral growth and reproduction. In terms of how humans affect the coral reef, destructive fishing methods are the most common. Reversing damage caused by explosive fishing techniques and bottom trawling is a challenging task. Coral deterioration can also be attributed to overcrowding and motorboat operations near shallow water coral reefs for tourist enjoyment. The Sri Lanka Navy works with other law enforcement agencies to mitigate the harm that human activity causes to the coral reef. Smaller scale coral restoration initiatives have been commenced by the Navy in collaboration with Wildlife Department and Marine Environment Protection Authority. While some of the nation's coral reefs are disappearing, a brand new coral reef has recently started to emerge around the breakwater of Colombo Port City. This breakwater was designed and constructed by the Port City planners to protect the reclaimed land area from southwest and northwest winds and waves. Construction of the breakwater began in March 2017 and finished in December 2019. Incidentally, I made the initial discovery of the new shallow water coral reef at breakwater on a simulated scuba dive in 2019. Since then, coral growth along the breakwater wall, which is approximately 4 kilometers long, has been observed thanks to the persistent support of the Colombo Port City leadership. Breakwater coral reef is predicted to develop into a fully fledged coral colony in the future, potentially breaking the record of being one of the longest artificial natural coral reef in the world. Man-made component is the barrier built out of china pots and boulders. The natural component is the natural coral growth. The research carried out jointly with the Chinese and Australian scientists have firmly identified 133 fish species and 75 coral species along this breakwater. It's an amazing habitat for the marine life. If you come to Sri Lanka and dive at this location, even snorkeling, you would be able to see at least 75% of what you see on these slides. The unregulated flow of plastics, floating debris from upland areas into the ocean, which allowed it to entangle and damage corals, was the most concerning issue. This scenario was identified as a problem for sustainability of the coral reef. Logs, species of ghost net, discarded polysac bags, used polythene, and plastic goods are among these waste elements. Should the flow of plastic into the open sea continue, massive plastic patches resembling those in other Indo-Pacific regions may form near Sri Lanka, something that should be prevented at all costs. Corals and marine life consume microplastic, which are tiny plastic particles left over after bigger plastic breakdown. It is crucial to keep in mind that microplastics discovered in the water nourish fish and ultimately end up in our stomach. Furthermore, plastic can act as growth media for disease and hazardous algae, further taxing coral reef ecosystems. The health and resilience of coral reefs may be eventually impacted by this ingestion, which can have a variety of detrimental effects, including diseased feeding efficiency, nutrient disturbance, and toxicity. Cleaning the entangled plastic garbage underwater has required a patient investment of time and effort periodically in order to stop additional harm to the coral reef. With the support of the Port City leadership, a mission was carried out to replant the corals that had broken loose from the coral colony to revive the life of the damaged and weak corals. Live broken corals are carefully gathered by the divers into baskets and transported from the coral colony to the underwater nursery, where it will be fragmented to small pieces and replanted using a variety of coral planting techniques. The small fragments had now grown into a reasonable level within a period of 1 year. Amazing growth. It is anticipated that the small fragments of coral will eventually develop into giant corals in the nursery, where they will be employed to support the surrounding aquatic environment and aid the weakened reef come back to life. Such coral sapling can also be placed on other reefs that have suffered significant degradation in order to restore them and regain their due recognition. Over 2,500 coral saplings of various species segregated from live broken corals have been planted in this nursery already. This marine resource needs to be carefully structured for safety, enrichment, and nurturing, while it provides avenues for commercial exploitation, including scuba and snorkeling diving and activities related to marine protection and tourism. The nursery can also be a research site for students. This coral reef in development must be safeguarded with utmost care. Maintaining marine biodiversity and the health of ecosystem depends on the preservation and conservation of coral reefs. MS Holding, a leading company in the garment industry in Sri Lanka, has come up with an innovative mechanism to trap plastic near estuary using a strainer. The mechanism appeared to be very successful. Institutions must adopt the appropriate management and policy measures to protect the priceless ecosystem. From awareness to action, both protective and reactive measures must be covered by realistic policies. The leadership and members of Allen Coral Atlas accomplished a significant feat in creating the first ever global high-resolution map of the world shallow tropical coral reef, for which marine conservationists are appreciative. With all due respect to Allen Coral Atlas and Paulina Martin in particular, I would like to bring to attention the fact that several shallow water coral reefs in Sri Lanka that are physically visible through snorkeling are not indicated on the online version of the Coral Atlas map. I don't know whether I have seen the wrong application, but I am sure that they will take a prompt action to review the map. To that purpose, I shall offer my utmost assistance. I conclude by highlighting how crucial it is for the community, NGOs, INGOs, scientists, and government agencies to work together in order to carry out the activities related to coral conservation and protection, keeping these vital ecosystems intact for future generation and ensuring sustainable living must be our top priority concern when it comes to conserving and protecting the coral reefs.
Thank
so
you
much for listening to my
so
presentation.
much. Thank you so much, Admiral De Silva. Absolutely brilliant and just such a rich presentation. And thank you again for hosting most recently Indo-PACOM's Pacific Environment Security Forum in Sri Lanka and having made coral reefs a really central part of that experience for everybody. I was so disappointed that I was sick and couldn't come, but I heard what a wonderful educational time it was for people. And I'm sure, Paulina, when we come to the Q&A, will have noted your comment about ensuring that some of those reefs still need to be mapped. And I think that's the beauty of this kind of webinar, where we have experts from so many countries across the region and from so many different areas. So thank you very much. Now, Sefa Nawadra, who is the Director General of SPREP, has some connectivity issues in his village. It's already Good Friday in Samoa. So we are going to play the video that he's sent us.
Bulavinaka participants, my apologies that I may not be able to attend in person. It's the Easter weekend in Fiji, long holiday here, so I've taken the opportunity to go to the village. Connectivity may be an issue, but it's a pleasure to be able to address you and talk to you about the work of SPREP. And the importance of coral reef ecosystems for the Pacific. Those of you who don't know SPREP is the Pacific's intergovernmental environmental organization. It was established as a standalone organization 31 years ago. Members of SPREP are the 14 Pacific Island countries, 7 Pacific Island territories, and the what are called metropolitan members, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, the US, and France. We have our main campus in Samoa, and we have offices in Fiji, Marshall Islands, Vanuatu, and Solomon Islands. We have a staff of about 150, and we carry out work in the 4 main programmatic areas: climate change, biodiversity conservation, waste and pollution, and environmental governance. We have an additional cross-cutting thematic area, oceans, which cuts across all of the issues. Coral reefs are existential to Pacific Island countries. Those who know about islands know that coral reefs cannot, islands cannot exist without coral reefs. The communities have learned to live off the reefs, food security, for tourism, for the protection of their villages and homes, building material for their houses. So any threat to coral reefs is a threat to life on islands, as well as the cultures that we have built up through our millennia of existence in the islands. Climate change has brought new pressures through the warming of oceans and ocean acidification. Waste and pollution has also put pressure on the coral reefs. So it's really a microcosm of the triple planetary crisis that the world faces on climate change, biodiversity loss, and waste and pollution. SPREP itself was formed as a coral reef project 40 years ago while it was still at SPC, and then it became the Secretariat of the Regional Seas Convention for the Pacific, the NUMEA Convention. So coral reef work is also foundational to SPREP. SPREP does its coral reef work through the Framework for Nature Conservation in partnership with the Roundtable for Nature Conservation, which consists of island countries, partners, development partners, NGOs, and the universities. There is a thematic area on coral reefs, and they have come up with their own coral reef action plan, which is the action plan that coral reef work in the Pacific follows. What we need is support from our partners and donors to implement what's in the coral reef plan. In addition to that, the NUMEA Convention has its own action plan. The NUMEA Convention is aimed at the protection of the marine environment within the Pacific, and a large part of that is coral reefs. As a final comment, there's a lot of focus on tuna fisheries in the Pacific and its management and the collection of data to allow effective management. But in a lot of ways, it's the coral reef related fisheries which is more important to Pacific Island countries, because it's what our communities feed off. And there needs to be the same amount of management effort put into that as is currently put into the tuna fisheries. Because tuna fisheries is such a big economic part of island countries, a lot of effort is put into that. We need countries and partners to put the same effort into coral reefs. The protection of coral reefs is not only done through legislation and regulation, but it's also done through traditional authority. It's something that communities have practiced over the millennia, and they need to be supported and enabled to carry out the management of coral reefs through these traditional practices.
Thank you, Director General Nawadra from the South Pacific Regional Environment Program in Samoa. We're going to take advantage of the time now to move directly to Professor Jody Rama. Now, Australia is home to the world's largest coral reef, the Great Barrier Reef, which consists of more than 3,000 individual coral reefs. It's as big as Japan or Italy and extends for 2,300 kilometers along the coast of Queensland. Widespread coral deaths during extreme heat waves have affected hundreds of millions of coral colonies, and this actually has far exceeded the damage typically caused by a severe cyclone. So we're so pleased to have Distinguished Professor of Marine Biology at James Cook University, Dr. Jody Rama, who has really done some pioneering research in the impact of stress on marine organisms, notably the effect of climate change and other human-caused problems on coral reef fishes, sharks, and rays, and the potential for adaptation. Jody, we can't wait.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to connect with so many inspiring humans. The focus of my research program here in Australia is investigating how sharks and other coral reef fishes are and will be responding to climate change stressors. So my team and I, we use physiology to understand how coral reef fishes, including sharks and rays, cope with environmental and anthropogenic or human-induced stress. I've always been impressed by the fishes. They make up over 50% of all animals with a backbone on the planet today. They occupy nearly every body of water. Therefore, they're influenced by an array of water quality conditions and have a tremendous capacity for adaptation. In fact, over 400 million years underpinning their success, which, based on a lot of mine and my team's research, we think has in part to do with their incredible capacity to uptake, transport, and deliver oxygen throughout their bodies. They're really little athletes, and therefore they're just a great group of organisms to study with respect to adaptation and contemporary issues that our oceans and our coral reef ecosystems are facing, such as climate change. And I don't discriminate, bony fish, cartilaginous fish, like this little epaulet shark here pictured in the top. We have a dozen or so of these in the lab here at James Cook University, and we've been working on this species as a climate change shark model for over a decade now. So let me take you to my office. I'm based in Australia in the state of Queensland on the northeast coast. And if we zoom in here, James Cook University is based in Townsville, which is also the epicenter of the Great Barrier Reef. Our doorstep, our office, our laboratory, and our inspiration for conservation. This is, of course, the largest coral reef ecosystem on the planet, stretching 2,300 kilometers along the coast. And thanks, Amanda, for that great introduction. We have so much diversity and so many reefs accounted for here with the Great Barrier Reef. I've been focusing on climate change impacts, much more these days on sharks, like these two species I'll soon introduce you to, because of all of the coral reef fishes, sharks may be some of the most vulnerable, given that they have long generation times. They take many, many years to reach sexual maturity. They grow slowly, they reproduce infrequently, and they only have a few offspring each time. Therefore, we think that not enough generations will go by fast enough for sharks to adapt or change their DNA to keep pace with the rate at which we're changing their environments. We've been working on this small shallow water egg-laying epaulet shark, which is endemic to the Great Barrier Reef, also known as the walking shark, since 2012. With this epaulet shark, we're able to examine all life stages from the embryo developing the egg, as in the lower right-hand photo, all the way through hatchlings and adult stages under experimental conditions to simulate an array of climate change scenarios. And we've closed the life cycle in the laboratory. That means our adults are happily reproducing, laying eggs, and we have eggs hatching every week in our lab. It's super exciting that we've been able to breed them in the laboratory here at JCU, as this opens up so many possibilities for our research. Plus, they are proving super tough to many climate change conditions, and therefore we can use them to help us understand what might be necessary for other shark species that are not as easy to study. I've also been running a shark physiology research program around the shallow lagoons and mangroves bordering the fringing reefs of Moorea in French Polynesia, which was already mentioned in an earlier talk. Since about 2013, French Polynesia is the largest shark sanctuary in the world. And of the 17 shark sanctuaries on the planet, it spans 4.8 million square kilometers of waters where sharks are protected from all kinds of fishing and exploitation. But of course, no dotted lines protect them from climate change. So this area allows us to focus on the impacts of climate change in the absence of their major stressor worldwide, which is fishing exploitation. Here we focus on newborn reef sharks in the first few weeks to first few months of their lives, as they are hugging these coastlines and sheltering in the 10 shallow nursery areas that we've been surveying annually, and the nursery areas that are subject to some of the most extreme climate change conditions in terms of warming, ocean acidification, low oxygen, runoff, and of course, coastal development. This opened up a lot of doors for us to engage with local communities, traditional owners, other scientists, and policymakers. And our findings have clear implications toward management in terms of better protecting existing marine protected areas and developing others, and really sending a message to the rest of the world as to how this can work and allow for a better, more lucrative, and healthier marine ecosystem, and how protecting sharks can safeguard coral reef ecosystems and the humans that they support. Our public outreach is incredibly important for our work, from documentaries like this one that debuted in New York City in the 2018 Wildlife and Conservation Film Festival, which you can watch free via the QR code here or on YouTube or Vimeo, and kids' education sessions and workshops worldwide, helping that next generation of scientists and conservationists fall in love with sharks and coral reefs, because we protect what we love, which is ever more important. As we are seeing now, What nature builds over millennia, humans can erase in a single lifetime. Indeed, here, my home on the Great Barrier Reef and reefs worldwide, for that matter, these ecosystems have been in a dire state, facing repeated marine heat waves that have resulted in coral bleaching and mortality worldwide. But on the Great Barrier Reef, to the point where now less than 2% of the entire reef has not faced heat-induced bleaching since 2016. Yes, that's just in my time here in Australia so far. In my short career so far, we've had mass bleaching in 2016, 2017, 2020, again in 2022. This is the map that was anonymously leaked to the media in April of 2022, which are at the time the Morrison government here in Australia tried to repress. And now we are here again in 2024. According to NOAA's satellites, thermal exposure in the past couple weeks has been well above 10-degree heating weeks on most reefs throughout the Great Barrier Reef, bearing in mind that corals begin to bleach at 2 to 4-degree heating weeks. And this is what we've been experiencing here just in the past month, from February all the way on the far left of the screen to March, just a few days ago, actually, in the center image, and the bleaching off of Lizard Island in the northern part of the Great Barrier Reef, as seen in the two photographs. My question is, how are we to protect these ecosystems and the important predators that help keep them healthy when this is happening? We know that climate pollution caused by the burning of fossil fuels is the biggest threat that Australia's natural spaces, like the Great Barrier Reef, faces. Yet our national environment law here in Australia does not directly assess climate change and its impacts when assessing fossil fuel projects. So of course, our government is not adequately protecting our treasured places, and we must fix this. This is where my science and my advocacy come together. I hope that my research findings, my communication, my outreach, my voice can help change policy and inspire others so that we can help ensure that generations to come can enjoy these beautiful ecosystems, but also benefit from all they provide to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jody. And what a wonderful way of weaving together a systems approach. I've just come from Geneva and the Interparliamentary Union, where we were showing a number of climate action tools. And I had a fascinating conversation with the chief economist for sustainability at the World Bank a couple of days ago. And he said, look, when we look at subsidies for fossil fuels, both explicit and implicit, they're around $7 trillion a year. And if we were to remove those, we would have a drop in emissions of 34%. We need to get to 43% by 2030. So it's so important, Jody, that you were bringing not only your brilliant research, but also your advocacy to bear as well. Thank you very much. Now, Paulina, I'm going to go straight to you. Admiral De Silva noted there are some reefs that need mapping. Would you like to respond to that?
Thank you. And thank you for letting me know, Admiral. I'm sorry to hear that. And it's possible that to just share some of the challenges that we faced in the mapping, the turbidity is really, it's funny because it can be a data set that is very helpful to people, but it can also be prohibitive to mapping from satellite because there's only so much you can do to take out the sediment if you're looking from very far away from a satellite. It's not quite the same as snorkeling or going underneath the water. So it's possible that it could have been due to an issue such as that. But regardless, I'm going to look into it, and maybe we can offline talk about where it is and how we can look into it, because I'd like to fix that.
Yeah,
fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. May I make a comment, Amanda?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. So, in Sri Lanka, visibility is basically seasonal. We have two monsoons. When there is a monsoon from northeast, only the southwestern part and the southern part of the country is basically clear. But when it comes from opposite side, it is the northeastern part of the country. So we have to select the correct period to map the coral reef, and also if there is a possibility to use the technology of drones, and I'm pretty sure that the agencies in Sri Lanka will support to do that part. And we actually had a plan to engage in Coral Atlas to map the coral reef in Sri Lanka with the support of PACOM and the other agencies. But unfortunately, it did not happen. So I kindly request to pursue that and see whether it could be rearranged again.
Sounds like a very good practical suggestion. Supported. I also a quick question on journalism. We are doing some work on climate training for journalists with Rockefeller. So I put my email address in the chat, and any of you who are interested, I promise I will respond. So I was fascinated to see about the marine protected areas, Paulina. That's just absolutely amazing to see that in response, as Jody said, wouldn't it be great if governments responded like that to all of the issues surrounding coral reefs and resilience to the climate crisis? So wonderful to see that, in fact, there have been those responses. Oh, here we go. Sorry, one more. What spatial resolution is the minimum for satellite data used in mapping? And are you confident in differentiating seagrass from coral reef? I think, Paulina, that's yours.
Sure. Yes, maybe I'll answer the second one first, which is differentiating coral from seagrass. And yes, we're very confident on that one. I will mention that we mapped seagrass everywhere that there was coral reef nearby because our priority was coral reefs. So which we consider to be probably about 70% of seagrasses of the world. So we know that we have not mapped all of the seagrasses of the world. So there are many places like in the Mediterranean that we weren't able to map because there were no tropical shallow coral reefs there. But yes, we're very confident about the method of differentiating the two. And the second question was about spatial resolution. For the Allen Coral Atlas, all of the habitat maps that we've created are about 5-meter resolution, meaning every pixel is about 5 meters by 5 meters. And for the turbidity and bleaching data sets, we use the European Space Agency products, so they're 10-meter resolution. Hope that answers it.
Thank you so much. One final question. This may be one for Laura. This is resulting the impacts of coral reef bleaching and also the impacts of a resurgence in tourism. How can we effectively balance the needs of conservation with those of the tourism industry to ensure sustainable coexistence? So Laura, is that a question that you would feel comfortable answering? And perhaps that's one for Jody as well.
Thanks, Amanda. That's a great question. And especially with our system in French Polynesia, what we've been able to do with our colleagues is put a price tag on a healthy shark that gets to live its entire life in a healthy coral reef ecosystem. And each shark is worth almost $1 million if you think about the amount of revenue that comes in from ecotourism. And so they really highlighted the importance of not only protecting sharks, but protecting the ecosystems on which they depend and that depend on them as well. And I think when you have that bottom line, you put that dollar amount on something and it's so high like that, then I think people's eyes open and see it as an economically viable solution.
Terrific. Thank you all so much. We could speak for hours. I'm going to segue now to the second part of our session and introduce Christina Monroe, who leads the alumni function at the East-West Center and does a fantastic job. Christina, I know we're really thrilled to have a number of our alumni now who are working in this area. So I'm going to pass the baton to you to introduce them. Thank you.
Aloha. Thank you, Amanda. Yes, I have the honor of introducing our next 3 speakers who are alumni. We have 70,000 people that have come through the East-West Center. You could be alumni, so I am going to plug at the end some of the open applications for researchers, for women entrepreneurs that we have. So look for that. So even more of you can be part of our alumni Ohana. Which is represented by 53 chapters globally as well. There may be one in your community. I will first begin. Our first alumni speaker is Dr. Emma Porio. She did her sociology degree with us at the University of Hawaii, being an EWC fellow in 1983. She's a distinguished academic and holds the position of professor of Department of Sociology and Anthropology at Ateneo de Manila, and also serves as science research fellow at the Manila Observatory. She's a prominent figure, which you will understand why after hearing a bit from her, currently holding the presidency for the International Sociological Association Clinical Public Sociology Division, Asia Pacific Sociological Association. She led the Coastal Cities at Risk, Investing in Climate and Disaster Resilience in the Philippines project. That was in a 5-year period in the late 2000, starting in 2017, and is currently involved in institutionalizing its findings in academia and collaborating with various sectors. Dr. Porio, thanks for being with us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Christina, for the wonderful introduction. And also I'd like to thank Amanda Ellis and her team for organizing this wonderful seminar. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you out there. I'd like to thank, the ESU Center for organizing this wonderful forum. Let me share with you what we are doing in the Philippines. If you can see in my title, I said Philippine cities and coastal communities, aspiring to be resilient, inclusive, and sustainable amid climate and disaster risk. You can see you have 3 websites that you can Google to know more our work for the last 6 years or so. The Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines is a consortium of scientists from Ateneo de Manila University and Manila Observatory with our implementing partner, the National Resilience Council, a public-private people partnerships at the local national government levels, civil society, and private sector. Let me start basically by looking at this challenge that we're facing. The IPCC in 2022 says that climate change has increased poverty levels, widening inequality, and creating vulnerabilities, especially among those marginal communities like women, children, elderly, PWS, and LGBTQI. The twin crisis of our time, climate and social inequality, has been exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic and intensifying vulnerability among those already marginal and disadvantaged communities. The Philippines tops the World Risk Index. In 2019, it's number 9, but with a series of climate disasters, we're now number 1 from 22, 23, 24. We are a nation exposed to multiple hazards, and we at the Coastal Cities at Risk basically think that our job is to institutionalize the resilience agenda at the local level with universities, local governments, and resilience councils, at the national level, a regional and global level through vertical, horizontal, and intersectional collaborative partnerships for transformative resilience. CICARPH is a consortium of resilient cities at Metro Manila, Metro Naga, Metro Iloilo, and lately of Metro Cebu and other cities in Mindanao. You can see here some of our climate disaster risk assessment products, maps in partnership with local governments and also in partnership with academic institutions and the civil society and private sector. The Philippines climate change context and vulnerability can be seen here. At the middle, you can see that sea level rise in the Philippines are affecting 64 of 81 provinces in the Philippines and 64% of the 1,610 municipalities and cities. In your left-hand side, you can see Manila by 2020 will be inundated. Half of the metropolis will be inundated. And here in Cebu, where I come from, Cebu City, saltwater intrusion by 2050 will reach 15 kilometers inland. And as you know, without water, after 3-4 days, you'll die, but only after 40 days that you'll die without food. So water is life. So what we have been doing in Coastal Cities at Risk is to bridge science policy nexus through transdisciplinary action research. And basically what we need to do is to bridge science, through cogeneration of knowledge with stakeholders. We also co-create capacities of scientists, professionals, and practitioners. And if you do that, it will lead to co-ownership, co-stewardship, and co-benefits of all our initiatives for transformation for resilience. Here, because we don't have much time, I'd like to focus on some of what we've been doing with some coastal communities, that we must do a risk-informed climate action in coastal areas. We have to understand the Philippines' small island risks, their hazard and exposure to climate disaster risk, like sea level rise, typhoons, and the like. We've been doing climate and disaster risk assessment of contextual multi-dimensional analysis of small islands. It includes inter-island, island, mainland, archipelagic, core periphery relationships. So what some of the activities we've been doing is really partnering with private sector, civil society, and the local and national governments in doing climate change adaptation initiatives through some of the green-gray infrastructures. Like here you can see in Concepcion, Iloilo, on doing partnering with local communities and barangay councils in rehabilitating the coastal ecosystems. Mangroves are very good in terms of reducing annual flooding, more than 18 million globally. So mangrove rehabilitation is very important in terms of preserving the health of coastal ecosystems, including coral reefs and other marine services. So we at Coastal Cities at Risk partner with local government units, local universities, and civil society organizations to support women and men in terms of community organizing, promoting and supporting their livelihood activities, which is really dependent on healthy coastal ecosystems. I would say that in the Coastal Cities at Risk, we are really for science-based technologies to inform our risk assessment and our planning and development investment. So there are 4 principles in terms of how we can move science and technology towards anticipatory climate action in coastal Philippines. I believe in the Pareto principle. You must put your 20% input, 80% output. But I always tell the local governments and local communities, it seems the other way around now. Number 2, there's power in communities, work with stakeholder groups and other community groups that are committed towards preserving the coastal ecosystem, because it's very important for the livelihoods of our people. Number 3, we must innovate and collaborate. But to collaborate, you have to navigate the systems within and across community systems and institutions. So my message to scientists, policymakers, leaders, civil society, sector, practitioners, and all, we are at the crossroads of our time. We are at the crossroads of our life in this planet. These are the urgent needs. Need 1. We need to be anticipatory in our climate action and planning and development. We have to prepare, adapt, and transform our ways of doing if we have to be resilient. Number 2, we need to collaborate and innovate for climate and disaster resilience. And as I said earlier, we have to navigate the systems of science and technology, knowledge creation and mobilization for climate action with stakeholders. Number 3, we need a strong commitment to invest in a risk-informed, resilience-driven planning and development investments. And lastly, we need to create conditions for transformative climate action, coherent and convergent policy, practices, and resource flows, anchored on power and connections, and more importantly, connectedness to a common vision of inclusion, resilience, and sustainability. Again, my message to all is that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, we must work together. And this is the team that I've been working since 2017, local governments, academia, national governments, and some of the international groups as well. You are perfectly welcome to download anything from our 3 websites. Just acknowledge us. Thank you very much.
Mahalo, Dr. Porio. Thank you for backing us up to think about the coastlines more broadly and climate resilience. Thank you for that. We're going to jump now to our most recent alumni. He just completed one of our newest programs, funded by the Japan Foundation, our Indo-Pacific Leadership Lab. So happy to have Chris Osato with us today. He designs and implements collaborative evidence-based approaches to address complex, interconnected social and environmental challenges. As a behavioral scientist at Creative Action Tank, a socially driven management consultancy, he partners with academic, private, and nonprofit organizations to leverage data and enhance program interventions. With over 10 years of experience in Southeast Asia, he successfully led change management, marine conservation, research, education, and social entrepreneurship programs. Chris is concentrating on the intersection between marine ecosystems, community resilience, and waste management to mitigate the adverse impacts of climate change and support the development of inclusive policy across the region. Chris, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me here. I really appreciate this opportunity to share some of the work. Basically, as I was introduced, I am a behavioral scientist, so I work with communities and organizations that are looking to either do some conservation work or to increase their sustainability management. So I am going to try to take you on a 4-minute ride on 2 different approaches for coral reef conservation. You might notice my cringy smile there. It's because I'm excited for the community that was innovative and took an old bus to throw it down as a potential substrate, but also concerned that it is waste going into the ocean. But you'll see that it's important to work with the communities where they are, and that goes for all sectors. When we look at this picture, what do we think? Is this a marine problem? Is this a terrestrial problem? When I look at this, what I see is this beautiful beach. I understand that there's economic impacts, there's health impacts, but what I really see is that there's a behavioral problem. There's a behavioral challenge. And if this is the thesis that I'm working with, then we need to have data, because without data, there's no metrics, there's no movement. It's impossible to move forward if you don't know what you're trying to change. So the typical approach working with the communities, you have to work with the people closest to the issue. That is my belief. And this typically comes out in the form of monitoring, traditional monitoring techniques, restoration. So that could be knowledge exchange, looking at what equipment, what resources they have available, that's fish dome, and trying to figure out what's the best solution in that area for the communities to take advantage of. And of course, throughout this entire process, beach cleanups are more and more common everywhere in the world as plastic is escalating into the oceans and inundating our beaches. So now that we've worked with communities, we realize there's another level that needs to happen. How do you communicate this? Okay, so let's look for some low cost, yet robust scientific evidence, right? So a typical criticism of coral monitoring on the local level with citizen science is that maybe it's not valid, not trustworthy. So you can see here, this is in West Papua. We were working with UNIPA, the University of Papua, and we were showing and exchanging knowledge on how to do 3D maps using simple cameras, GoPros and other point and shoot cameras for underwater structure from motion maps to be generated. We also explored how to build their capacity in using ecoacoustics. So this is a way that you can monitor what's happening by hearing. Different fish actually have different sounds. They sound like they're burping or passing gas. They have very unique sounds. There's even some that sound like a broken dive computer. So now we have the community a bit more articulate in explaining their problems. So what does this look like? What's the next step then? So then we have to help them to take their findings and communicate to the wider audience, to the wider communities, policymakers. And the best way to do this that we found and our approach is to keep it simple. So basically we have a 3D map here, and it shows this particular area in West Papua that's often neglected, the backside of Bird's Head. It's Manokwari. And we've identified, you can see on the right side of the screen, there's plastic waste, there's overfishing, there's dynamite fishing, there's bleaching, and et cetera, sedimentation and so on and so forth. So we support the communities in order for them to then take this knowledge and then present it to the world. One of the results from this, which was really interesting, was that during 2021, if I'm not mistaken, there was a ship that grounded on some coral reef. And because of this interaction, one of the results was that they were able to do their monitoring all by themselves independently with the university's help, and able to then justify the value of the coral reef lost, and the insurance paid out for it immediately. So this is the marine issue, but it's bigger than that. So like, if we're talking about marine waste, which is what I've been focusing on for the past few years, we got to look at where it's coming from. Most of the plastic waste actually comes from land, comes from waterways. So this picture is basically highlighting, if your waste looks like that when it leaves your house or your business, it's gonna end up in that dump. That's actually gone, one of the biggest waste dumps in Indonesia, in Jakarta. And the problem is they have a lot of open dumps. This is common within most of the developing world. And once this is mixed and it's organized in this fashion, it enters the waterways and it goes into the ocean. So what do? We have to work with the large organizations. So specifically, I've been able to connect with some really innovative food and beverage groups, and they've allowed this experiment to go on. So basically, our takeaways is that if you separate at source, you're able to then utilize what you have. So this is as simple as like separating the plastic and keeping it clean. Once you mix it up, you can't get the same value for the materials. Understanding this, they were able to then take cardboard, paper, plastic, anything that's inorganic can be recycled and upcycled. Then we identify other solutions. So typically, when you think about waste, especially within the marine context, you think about plastic, but in reality, these two are very hard to be separated. So we work on also, how do you identify solutions for the organic waste? So there's solutions, feed for animals, it could be composting, and so on and so forth, maggots, that generates another economy around that entire process. So what does this look like at the end? Well, basically, working with the organizations, the different food and beverage, this is from 80 restaurants, this data. So in the beginning, they were already working on avoiding waste going to the landfill. But here it transitioned from not only going from the landfill, but also finding a second life, either being upcycled or recycled. And the key takeaway from here is that working with the private sector, we were able to justify this activities and this change within the organizations because you can monetize the upcycled and recycled. So it pays for itself. So they're literally removing the waste that would go into the ocean and also self-funding this activity. So I know I threw a lot out there in my what should have been 4 minutes, but thank you for having me. If you'd like to connect, please reach out.
Chris, thanks so much. And thanks for being an ally to the Women Leadership and the Sustainability Affinity Group. It's a perfect segue into the and connection to the work that Aya does in Malaysia. You'll see some obvious connections there. So Hidayah Khalid, I'm going to shorten your impressive background to give you more time. She is the manager of the Perhentian Marine Research Station, which is a marine conservation station on the Perhentian Islands off the coast of Malaysia. Aya, glad to have you.
Hi, thank you, Christina. Thank you for everyone, and then thank you to Christina, thank you to the East West Center for hosting the sessions, and then for inviting me to at least share what we have done in Perhentian Islands, and also what and also learnings about all other initiatives that have been done around the globe, especially learnings about Island Atlas. So I just know that we already been included in the website, so it will be a good reference to us. So I'll presenting a few things about what we have done in Perhentian, which is located in Terengganu. So this is a bit like geographical backgrounds about where we are located in. We are such a small islands, of course, the Peninsula Malaysia, and then we are consists of two big islands, and then we got 5 more inhabitants islands, which is spread around the Perhentian archipelago. So this is where we are located at. So we are at the first forefront of Gulf of Thailand, and then this is also another locations where we are receiving quite a lots of marine debris from northeast monsoon, the seasonal monsoon that we have in Malaysia. Okay, so this is for the information about the Perhentian Marine Stations. We've been established in 2017 under the social-based enterprise. So we are coming as a business entity to the islands under the tourism, as a tourism business. And then later on, we just realized that the marine resources over here needs to be highlighted and then need to be studied to understand how the ecosystem work over here so it can be last longer for the community. So it's very small islands. We only have 1 village, around 2,000 communities over here. And then they've been 98% of the populations over here are reliance on the tourism, because this island has been gazetted as a marine park. So that's recognized as a no-take zone area nationally. So it's 100% utilized for recreational purposes. And then livelihoods of the community, 100% most likely a major depending on the tourism activity. So PMRS is here to understand the ecosystem that we have on in Perhentian Islands and to combine the scientific findings that we have done for the islands with the community approach here, so that we can have more balance in terms of like scientific findings and also how the community can be parts of conserving the marine ecosystem, because this is their homeland by far. So what we have been working on, we try to focusing on 3D strategy to explore the marine ecosystem. As the staff, we have the capacity to dive, to understand what is happening to our coral reef around, and then we are also having a few internal research projects that help us to understand our coral reef and also the seagrass area that we have in Perhentian. And then we are promoting in terms of enrich through conservations, where we're providing opportunity to the public audience to be parts of the conservation initiative, and also to for the stations to financially be able to operate and to run our conservation strategies. Last but not least, this is our main approach, which is empowering the local community. So we are able to establish a local groups, youth of Perhentian Islands, native to the islands, to participate and partake. So coming from the very basic backgrounds of the scientific information, educational information onto coral reef ecosystems, now they are having qualifications to partake in our survey, annual survey for the coral reef in Perhentian Island. So what we are trying to working on in Perhentian is the participatory management approach, where we have this approach will address the needs of local stakeholders, including tourists, including stakeholders around, including our dive sectors, our tourism sectors, our resorts, and so on. And then we are trying to address the resource for local community to be managed sustainably, and resource for tourism also to be managed. So this is kind of like balancing between the community livelihoods and then also the in terms of the businesses for everyone's on the islands, and also for the marine ecosystem itself to be sustained. And obviously all user conflicts are resolved. So this is more like having all the agreements between every levels of the stakeholders that we have. So conservation programs that we have on the islands with such a very small conservation projects. We are working with the communities over here. We only have 3 staff so far. So this is part of the things that we have done locally on the islands, working on ecosystem surveys. We have done coral survey, reef survey, participated by our volunteers and also the local community. So this is where I always believe that if we were to manage one ecosystem, one habitat, we have to think about the peoples that reside within that. So they are the one who the one who depending. If we can't really manage how they utilize their resources, or if we can't really mitigate how they can use the resources, that means they will continuously using that until it lasts. So to protecting one environment, we really have to think about how the human subject in those ecosystems. So we have habitat restorations for the youth to learn on. We are doing also like a coral plantings, no-bin plantings, and then working on monitoring the coral restorations that we have on the islands, scientific exploration in terms of like seagrass mapping. We are doing seagrass surveys, and also we are doing marine life explorations, where we are trying to map the biodiversity of marine ecosystem with the help of all the divers. It's kind of like citizen science program that we spread out to our dive shops around. So they are happily to contribute to the submissions of all the marine life sited around Perhentian. This will help in terms of like providing information to all tourists that comes, and then the more they know, the more they love what we have over here. And then so we are hoping that it can boost the awareness in terms of marine ecosystem in Perhentian. Yeah, we do have tours, we have plastic free, we have a ghost net and underwater cleanup. So there's a marine debris program problems that we have on the islands as far as the monsoon seasonal monsoons that we've been receiving every year. So for now, like as of today, we just passed southeast monsoon and northeast monsoon. We just passed the phase. It's the season start. We will see how much the marine debris we have to collect, trying to remove from the reef area. And then one of the most important programs as far we have is Anak Pulau. So literally translated as the children of the islands. So this is what we've been investing a lot for the youth in Perhentian, and so that they can participate in conservation activities. Because I'm not from the islands, I was from the mainland, like not native to the islands. Like having them trained and then understand the resource that they have, this is gonna help in terms of for them to participate in terms of a higher management plan later on.
Thank you so much, Hidayah. You've got just an incredible amount of wonderful things going on here. Thank you so much for sharing with us this evening. And as we come to our closing minutes of the webinar, we're going to have some very brief comments from Dr. Kirsten Ollison, who is a member of the Pacific Research Advisory Board based at the University of Hawaii.
Great. Thank you so much, Amanda. Yeah, just trying to bring a few comments of things I've heard tonight from these amazing presentations. I've been absolutely astounded by the multifaceted approaches that people are taking to address coral reef crisis. I heard themes of engaging people, bringing people along and listening to them and hearing from them about what's needed, considering behavioral change within the projects of integrating education and involving people, moving up the problem chain so that you're intervening not just at the point where we have the trash on the coral or the removal of the mangroves, but all the way up through some of the economic tools that we can use to protect reefs and to change people's behavior. I think another really amazing aspect of this is the empowering potential of technology to help scale efforts using things like the Allen Reef Atlas, artificial intelligence, which I saw a lot of people are using in the chat, and information on people's behavior to get better data so that we can intervene at points where we will have impact. I think one of the things that I'm looking forward with the East-West Center is developing capacity to use these technology tools to really create actionable actions in our communities. So that was a very brief recap of some of my take-home messages, and I really appreciate everybody's contributions today.
Terrific. Thank you so much. For those who are interested in learning more about the upcoming Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting hosted by Samoa, we have a 30-second video from our partner, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Union.
I'm Stephen Twigg. I'm the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to this virtual gathering. I'm sorry that I can't be there with you in person. The focus that you will have on the pivotal role that coral reefs play in enhancing climate resilience is such an important issue. The Commonwealth Parliamentary Association's Small Branches Network has had a big focus on the climate crisis, on the environment and sustainability more broadly. The small branches bring together the legislatures of jurisdictions in the Commonwealth where the population is under 1 million, and we value our partnerships, including with the East-West Centre. Environmental resilience is a critical theme for small branches throughout this year, especially in the light of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting being hosted by Samoa in October of this year. We eagerly anticipate the insights and contributions from the diverse range of experts and organisations that are taking part in this webinar series. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. And that is a great introduction now to our final speaker, who is one of our alum and spoke at another one of our affinity groups, Nadia Meredith-Hunt from Samoa, who is one of the principal consultants for KVA Consult. Nadia, tell us a little bit more about what we can expect and how some of our many partners can get involved.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amanda, and very inspired by all the presentations that I've heard today. As a Pacific Islander, the ocean is critical part of our livelihoods, so it's very encouraging to see all the work that is underway to protect these critical habitats. In terms of the CHOGM meeting, as you've heard from the Parliamentary Committee head, there are 56 member countries. Samoa is getting ready to host all these important leaders come October this year. So run for a week from the 21st to the 25th. There are 4 key forums, one on business, the youth, and also people and women. I'm currently involved with organizing the forum, so I can see a lot of the work and presentations that have come through today. They're very valuable and will add a lot of insights of how we could promote the theme of one resilient common future, transforming our Commonwealth. So that's basically the call to action, urging us all to unite in building resilience across every facet of our shared existence. And of course, the coral reefs play a very important part in that. Very happy to provide more details for those who are interested. The East-West Center has my contact details. So please feel free to send me an email if you're interested to present or be part of this meeting in October.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Nadia, and thank you for being such an engaged alum. Really appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing us this 5 extra minutes to promote the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting coming up in our own region in Samoa. Thanks to all our terrific presenters and to all of you online who engaged. We will be putting this together as a replay, so you will be able to come and see the slides again and engage. Thank you all so much. And our next affinity group will be on journalism. Lots of questions in the chat on that. Thank you all so much. Signing off from Phoenix, Hawaii, and all around the region. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mahalo nui loa, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, Amanda.